earlier at the living room. For those of you who participated in Effective English at Work, you've kind of had some of your answers, questions answered. And I know over here at the chamber it was very interesting because we were talking about English in the Singaporean home, and lots of people obviously had different stories of how they grew up with English or not. And I think it's something that affects everybody. And when I say everybody, it's everyone here in Singapore. It's part of our identity. And, personally, I think it's great that, we're engaging with this. And, I'd just like to flip it on its head. I've got two nieces. They're British, but they're born, bred, raised in Singapore. They're 7 and 4. And they're two British parents. Oh, they struggle as well because the kids speak English. They're from Singaporean nursery and they speak Mandarin as well. But the thing is, it's really funny when you see them and they're trying to correct their child, and it's like you have different identities. So today, we've got a panel of experts. Please put your hands together. We've got Gwee Li Sui, who's a poet, Irene Ang, I'm sure everybody would know Irene, and Peter Tan, who's going to be here to school us, right? And of course, oh my goodness. And we have moderating the session, we have Mr. Gwee Li.
Welcome back.
Test.
I do want to say this before we start. The Speak Good English movement, we always get to become the bad guy in terms of Singlish. And in the beginning, when the Speak Good English movement was started, the position was not to encourage Singlish, or in fact, to get rid of Singlish. But over the years, the movement's approach to Singlish, and certainly, generally, the mood of the country, from Singaporeans to people in the government, is that Singlish is part of our national identity. So I want to state that very clearly. I'm sure through the different sessions in the afternoon, you already realize that we are embracing Singlish. But the big but is that we are the Speak Good English movement. We're not here to promote Singlish. We leave Singlish as it is. We are here to help each other improve standard English. All right. Wrong talk. So you see. So now I'm going to ask Li Sui to tell us, each of you, to tell us how you have found Singlish and English relevant in your life.
Singlish and English relevant in my life. Okay, where shall I start? Okay, I'll start with how I thought the reply to my Singlish article in the New York Times by the government was quite strange, because it says that I have a PhD, therefore I can code switch and speak English, and then speak Singlish. But frankly, all my life I've been speaking Singlish. I've been speaking it since young. And as I grow up, I learned English as well. My family, my dad does speak English. My mom doesn't. My sister, she speaks English, but not as well as I think my dad and me. And we kind of learn along the way. At least I did. The rules of English taught to me in school, and then I get better from reading and all that. But Singlish has always been something that lived alongside Singlish. It's not something that I somehow, once I got a PhD, I decided to help or understand the poorer people. Okay, firstly, Singlish is not connected to socioeconomic status. Let's get it clear, right? I think, right up there if you find a Singaporean good English speaker, you can also get him to speak Singlish. You know, it's not just me, it's quite a lot of us. Okay, so it doesn't work that way. And it's not because we speak Singlish, because we pity those people, you know, we have to go down to their level and speak. I think that's a very condescending way of thinking about Singlish. There's so much heritage in the language itself. So from the start, I think I will make it as a point that, you know, it helps a lot if we just learn to separate them. English is English, Singlish is Singlish. Don't confuse the two. There is bad English, there's also bad Singlish. Today I wear this shirt, just now a lot of people say, wow, what it means, I think it shouldn't be like Singlish geek rather than grammar geek. No, because this t-shirt is about not, I mean, by grammar, I don't just mean English has grammar. Singlish has grammar too. And then, no, the response I got is actually a few, not just one or two of you, if you think I was talking about you, Singlish got grammar, man. That's the thing, that's the basis of the point that we have to understand. There is a grammar.
Okay,
and
I'm going to interrupt you
oh,
because
sorry, I'm
that's
ranting
for,
already.
That's for later on.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you're only supposed to introduce yourself. Now, Irene's story is very different from Li Sui's story.
Yeah, like I say that Mr. Gwee and myself are in the wrong room because that's obviously where his passion lies from what he has just introduced himself. Hello everyone, I'm Irene Ang, and my story is a little bit different. Since young, I was sent to convent school, and I was brought up by my grandmother who only spoke Hokkien. So the only two languages that I knew how to converse in is Hokkien and English. So much so that at one point in primary school, I remember that our school had a second language day, like every Tuesday at all common areas at recess time. During recess, you can only speak Mandarin. We were forced to speak Mandarin, and I grew up only knowing how to speak English and Hokkien. And the very little Mandarin I knew was from TV lah. But in those days, you have Cantonese TVB shows as well. So by the time I got to secondary school, I knew Cantonese, Hokkien, and English. So when I went to a co-ed school, I had to learn with the normal boys and all, I want to be part of them. I to blend in, not look down on them, but blend in, you know. I realized English is so important. You know, that for me to be accepted, for them to do favors for me, you know, and stuff, and so on and so forth. I need to learn Singlish. And then, lo and behold, 10 years later, I got the role of Rosie, and I had this problem. Whatever position or place that I'm placed in by the one above, I want to be the best in. So I tell myself, this is a Singlish show. If I am going to be an icon on TV, I must be the queen of Singlish. So it took me 20 years to perfect Singlish, and then for y'all to tell me to undo it. Right? So, yeah, because when after I started my own business, right, I realized I cannot go to meeting and say, hey, client, this is very cheap lah, you take lah, you know. And then my Citibank client look at me like, what's she talking about? And then on the other side, when I went to Malaysia and I started speaking properly, the clients were offended.
Thank you, your introduction is over.
My story haven't finished. Yeah, the client offended. They said, why you speak properly one? You must speak like you speak on TV. So I had a very tough time trying to code switch according to the experts. But I enjoy it, and I've learned over the years to code switch, and I'm quite comfortable with that.
Peter's story is very different as well.
Okay.
Okay, my story is a little bit different. Not as interesting, not as dramatic. I grew up in KL, actually. Main Chinese language is Cantonese, so I encountered Cantonese all around me. I had Cantonese ama, so there's Cantonese around. Family's Hokkien, but we also used English. So I think I grew up speaking English as well, together with other languages. It was clearly not a pure form of English. It had no name. We just thought that we were speaking English, but I think on reflection, that would probably have been very similar to Singlish as well. And it was completely natural. So that is my background. standard English, probably something you get more from schools and from your reading. So I'll just stop there.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, where do you think Singlish came from?
Where do I think Singlish came from? I think it's to do with people coming together, wanting to communicate with other, making use of whatever resources you have in order to do that. So if your background is from a certain language, you would make the resources from that language if not, you're not fluent in it. So academics say that it probably arose from the playground in English medium schools in Singapore. So English medium schools have been around for a long time since, I mean, we've talked about the Singapore Institution, Raffles Institution, and things like that. Initially, most of the pupils were Europeans and not Eurasians, but clearly by 1900 there were Chinese and especially Peranakans. They started going to English medium schools, and later on the Cantonese also went in. Hokkiens went in later. So you imagine all these people playing, Eurasians, Europeans, and so on. There would have been some sort of an attempt to communicate with each other, so there was a blend that arose. So I think that it would have started off in that sort of informal situation.
Li Sui has been researching Singlish, so what is your theory?
No, me first. Okay. Actually, I mean, I'm not sure about researching. I've just been like, when asked question, I'm curious. I go do a bit of searching around. And it's actually quite interesting. The word has been around for a while. If you look at the Straits Times history, it's been around since the 70s, and it was actually mentioned in the context of being taught or discussed at university level back in the 70s. And at that time, people loved it. It only became a problem increasingly, I think, from the 80s, when first it was banned from the schools. I think at the time, Education Minister Tay Soon came out and said that, in schools, no Singlish, even though it was very big socially. And then after that, of course, you know what happened in the 90s. But how it started, yeah, I think what was said by Peter could be possible, but there are people who claim that it only came about after, you had this first language, second language thing taught in the schools. I don't think that's true. I think it existed before. Even though back in the 50s and all, mostly people spoke something called Bahasa Melayu, right? Kind of street Malay, and somehow at some stage, Singlish replaced that. There may be interchanges between the two, there may be connections, but I think some linguists say that really no connection, not much connection. They are actually two separate languages working, and then one displacing the other. So that's what I know.
In my humble opinion, as a non-academic and a queen of Singlish, yeah. And second thing is, where did this come about? It's akin to current state of people using a handphone. Everyone has used Google Translate before. So just imagine in the 70s and 80s, where some people are educated, some people are not. My parents who were born in the 40s and the 30s and 50s, most of them, half of them or most of them are not educated, don't have amma, this kind, right? Then they will teach us that kind of English, right? Because their English is go pasa and translate. So it's like Google Translate. Have you seen the Chinese translate to English, those things you see on Facebook? It's that kind. So we learn that sort of stuff. So I feel that if you want to learn proper English, it drives back to the education system, to the teachers that you produce in schools. They take care of the good English. But if we want to communicate with fellow Singaporeans, we have to speak Singlish because, okay, when Singapore become more and more cosmopolitan and more foreign talents come here and Singapore become more rojak, right? The only way you can tell they are original Singaporean is when they speak the authentic Singlish. You know, have you eaten those laksa in those 5-star hotel, and then you eat the laksa by the roadside in KL or Newton, that kind of shiok, katong laksa? The authentic ones are different. The rumba, everything is different. So I think you want to tell a Singaporean, true Singaporean, original Singaporean, it's not the Filipinos trying to speak Singlish like, come back already, mom lah. You know, no. You know it's not a real Singaporean because we know the Singlish grammar. Yeah, and it's very hard for us to even explain. It's just inbuilt in us. It's just inbuilt.
Okay.
Can I?
Wait. I'm going to interrupt you. Egundu. This was published. This book was published by me, by the way.
She's
I'm
behind.
now paying for all my sins. In 1982. Sylvia is right behind. She is, in fact,
She's
the
the-
queen of Singlish.
No, she's the grandmother of Singlish.
But,
Queen of Singlish.
hold on, but. It's
Your
very,
Highness.
but it is very interesting that she's not, because in this book, that's supposed to be the first book to put Singlish into words. The word Singlish doesn't appear in this book at all. So I'm going to ask Sylvia, why Pasar Patois and not Singlish?
Does this thing work? Basically showing off, Pasar Patois, instead of saying Singlish. I think it's because I was not sure, because there's also across the causeway, Malish, Malay English, Malaysian English. So one tried to be a bit humble.
But I think the term Pasar Patois implies or hints at where this language came from.
Hybrid. The word pasar for marketplace, like the square, and patois is just fancy for slang, Frenchified slang.
Thank you. Now I will ask a question.
Can I add a point, because it's
Yes.
connected to what Irene says about Singaporeans' rebelliousness, and doing things to the language. I think that actually shows our creativity as well. I mean, as Singaporeans, yeah, correct. We are doing something to the language because precisely we are asked to own English, and you cannot own English without having the right to do something to the language. Right? I mean, you own a HDB house, you can do whatever you like inside there, right? Same thing, if you were to want Singaporean to own English, you cannot just use it functionally. You have to be able to own it, speak it in a way you like, do things to it. That's how Singlish become what it is. People start to do funny things to it, and then it becomes what it is.
Okay, now I'm going to go to the point that you raised early on. Is there such a thing as bad Singlish?
Yes. I'll give you an example. I say, go where, right? You guys all understand what that means. It has a very strange way of putting the where back, when if you ask in English, it's where are we going, right? But if you say where go, it's wrong, it's bad Singlish. You say where go, nobody understands it. People say, hey, you fake Singlish speaker. Correct. Unfortunately, there were Singlish linguists in a way that can put everything together. And I mean, I know there are in NUS and all, but to systematize all the grammar rules of Singlish, if that can be done, I think it's still changing. The difference between English and Singlish is that Singlish is still morphing. So whatever is said in the book, chances are a few years' time it's going to change a bit now, and then you're going to have exceptions. So in a way that English is a bit more fixed. Maybe not. Spoken, so what did she say?
Broken Singlish. Go where and where go, yeah. We should be talking about speaking good English, is it, huh? Sorry, I'm a bit lost.
Just to say that, of course, there's this Singlish grammar and things like that, because there are students and other people writing articles about the grammar of Singlish. So there's the accepted way of doing Singlish, and there's bad Singlish, therefore.
So, I make this connection that if Singlish has a grammar, then although some linguists will say that Singlish is one of the many Englishes, in fact, it is so distinct to the point that linguists love to write about Singlish because it's such a unique language. And I dare to use the word language, which separates it from English. So I think Li Sui is right. Keep this apart. Keep Singlish apart from English. They can coexist, and they do coexist in Singapore. And all this chest beating about, one must die before the other flourishes. I don't think that is good or true. I think if you keep them separate, then it's like learning French and English, learning Portuguese and English, learning Hungarian and English. It's two separate languages. That's the way I would like to see it. So it comes to, the next point is about code switching. What happens? I have this bugbear. Let me state the bugbear and see how our panelists respond to that. I agree with Li Sui. I think that there's a danger of condescension when you think that someone cannot understand what you're saying, and therefore you modulate your language. But my point is this, which is a separate point from that first point. If those of us who can code switch, meaning that we are fluent in English and fluent in Singlish, if we code switch downwards all the time, will we be helping those who want to improve their English and who can only speak broken English or Singlish? How do you respond to that?
See, you spoke for 1 minute. I'm still trying to understand your question. And if I paraphrase your question in Singlish is, you say want to change from A to B, can or not? What do you all think? Right? That's what he effectively mean, right? I'm not to condescend you. What I'm trying to experiment here is that the same thing that you just spoke could have been said to Mr. Gwee. What do you think of switching between Singlish and English? Do you think they can be switched easily, togetherly?
You're not actually answering the question, no. You just translate it to English and you pass it to me.
Exactly, because I was trying to understand because to me a language is meant to communicate. You know what I mean? And as okay, I may not get any job after this. Jeff, help me here. As a constant person engaged by the government, for campaigns, speaking to people at Toa Payoh Hub, CPM, MediShield, MTI campaigns, I was told to speak a language that they understood. Not condescending, but Singaporeans understood. And in an audience at Toa Payoh Hub, where you got auntie taking the NTUC plastic bag, you also got couples coming out from HDB. It's so diverse. And we found the one way to speak to everybody is to speak Singlish. Not bad English, but Singlish. Okay? So my point is that we have the ability to switch. Right? Are you a classic example? His question is that, no? Cannot coexist? Can coexist? Is it, that means I didn't get your question. Sorry, did you all get the question?
I think his question is whether if you were to speak, if you were to go to like someone who speaks bad English, and you try to tell him that you don't use, how are you going to stop them from using bad English and know the difference between Singlish and English? Hey, you lah.
Are you saying that if we persist in using Singlish, we don't give them these people a kind of a model.
I think that's not true. Now I understand your question, sorry. We have Channel News Asia. We have Topakju. We have places that you can learn proper English if you want to. In fact, I myself, after doing Po Chu Kang for 18 years and perfecting the art of Singlish, don't know whether my grammar correct or not, huh? Okay. I have thought, I spoke to a friend recently, I want to enroll in British Council and undo my grammar so that I can professionally code switch, you know. Yeah, so I myself feel that if I want to learn and speak, because I'm embarking on a speaking career, right, for my second career, and if I do get hired to go to like Thailand or Hong Kong for conferences, I cannot speak Singlish only, because half the people will be lost, right? So I was thinking of going back to British Council and taking up some classes.
But not everyone can go back to school, you see.
Then you read news and read newspaper and read books, lor. That's what they are trying to say. This one is their problem. We cannot solve everybody's problem. We pick up one shell in the sea can already.
It's also about practicality, right? I mean, a lot of us, you know, because our jobs require us to communicate with people who speak, who comes from other countries or from another, language capabilities. You have to speak English as a way to communicate with them. Right, but sometimes the auntie and all that kind of things, they no need what, you know. So you ask them to learn English, they will think, what's the use?
No, but that's my point.
What's the point?
My point is, why do we assume that people cannot understand simple English? Why do we assume that someone doesn't want to learn how to speak English? On one hand, we all laugh at all the mistakes that we see on signs, mistakes that people make. On the other hand, we are not willing to help them.
No, that's
by giving them a model to follow.
Well, yes, that's the job of Speak Good English movement.
See, but
right, you have to have the a kind of place that is outside school to teach people who are interested in English to get their English into a better shape. The grammar, the structures of English, right? You have to give them a way to learn these things, a place to learn these things. Preferably free.
I cannot disagree with you. School is a place where the foundation of English is laid. But I think my point is that all of us have a responsibility. We can help people. And if you want to help someone improve their English, that's wonderful. But if you don't want to, that's your decision. But I think for me, at least, one way is that I even if I go to a hawker center, and when you order food at a hawker center, you're not ordering like in a way that William gave the example, with highfalutin language. You use very simple English. And it's 5 or 6 words, 1 plate of chicken rice, please. That's completely grammatical. I can choose to say that in Singlish, but why not say it in simple English? But let's move on.
How you speak broken English when you're ordering a plate of chicken rice?
We come to that later.
I'm just curious. You always say chicken rice. That's all right. One chicken rice.
One chicken rice is
no,
fine.
No, it's not. It should be 1 plate of chicken rice.
1 hot dog.
Yeah.
1 chicken rice.
1 chicken rice is okay.
I think it's okay.
Spoken English worldwide.
Okay.
Spoken English worldwide. Very good. So Peter, what forms the structure of the English language?
What forms the structure of the English language? The structure is the grammar, but what are you asking? Sorry.
He's on the right track.
It's the grammar lah.
Yeah, the grammar is the structure, but those are just
it's not the intonation as well, right? Frankly, if you close your eyes, if you close your eyes and you listen to people speak English so far in this symposium, actually, nowhere else in the world will you hear this English, because it has a certain sound. No matter how well pronounced, how rounded your words are, there is a certain sound that can only be spoken here in Singapore, right? So that cannot be something we discourage, because it's going to be terribly crazy to try to undo. You can't make everyone speak like a BBC announcer. And even then, having lived in London for 3 years, not a lot of people in the UK speaks like BBC announcer in the first place. And that's funny. What's the standard, Yeah, again.
Yeah, so the accent is different from the structure.
Yes,
though.
yes.
And it's possible to speak standard English with a Singaporean accent. I think everyone has said that before.
But there's a difference between Singaporean English, standard English, and Singlish, right?
Yes, and then people will. It's a continuum, because the title is English, Singlish, and Broken English. It is not always clear that it's very standard or very Singlish. In that there's a kind of a continuum in between as well. So people will also talk about standard English, standard Singaporean English. So Singaporean English, which is quite standard, and one that is less standard, and so on. So when it's to do with communicating and getting across your point, right? That you want to stress your Singaporeanness, then you put in all your Singaporeanness. Then at other points you might want to stress it less, and it becomes more standard. So it's not clearly one or the other all the time.
If we look at the grammar of English, and I think at the earlier session about English at home, there was quite a lively discussion about how one lays the foundation of good English in the home. We've talked about the role of schools and teachers in the laying the foundation of good English. What about the role of the environment? And then I'm going back to that same point, the role of the environment, the role of people who are models of the English language. How can that influence the learning of English in Singapore?
How can the models influence the kind of English you get in Singapore? Well, we must provide the models, presumably. So if you can have people that people are interested in, they want to listen to them, they want to follow them, and so on. So heroes and that these people have. It's not something that can be set up artificially.
Actually, I feel that Singlish is not what you should fear. It's the influences on social media you should fear. You get a text from your sister that goes, Sis, S-I-S, TTYLICMB29. Sis, talk to you later, I'll come back tonight. Right? Singlish is actually a problem of the past. 80s, 90s, it's something that's already made its way. There's no point fighting Singlish. Better be proud of it and perfect it, It is the new social media, the text English that you should be fearful of. That to me is written English, because if you type like that, none of my staff below 25 years old can spell properly, At a meeting, I once said I want the word reservation typed on the invite as reservation, not in the short form. And they look at each other, hey, reservation, how to spell? Reservation, they do not know how to break down the words into phonetics and thereby spelling it, but we were taught that way. So I think it is important to, number one, that's why I love the Speak Good Mandarin campaign, because in school we are taught 多读多写多看多讲, right? Means it literally translates, you read more, you speak more, you talk to people more, you just use it more, you just be better. So if we live in an environment that we talk internet, online, whatever, what do you call those language online? the online language, okay, this SMS languages, they will speak that kind of English. And we speak the Singlish in the 80s and 90s because we chapalang the TVB show, Hokkien show, English show, Pasat show, NTUC show all together. Then we come out like that, right? But people like them that go to school one, they grew up better, Like I went to NUS also, National You Never Study of Singapore. You know what I mean? I'm a PhD also, right? Permanently high in demand. So I make the same salary as probably the lecturer, and I communicate as well as him. Does it make me feel condescended when he speaks English to me? No. You see? Because I love to read, I love to watch Netflix. I have a library in my house. You may be shocked to hear that. And I've read almost every historical leaders. Martin Luther King, Benjamin Franklin. I've read all their books because I'm interested in them as leaders. But my Singlish also very good, right? So I think that the role model thing cannot be forced to upon an individual. You must want to be proud of who you are. It's just that some people wear clothes very chapalang, and some people every time must spend 3 hours to get out of the house. It is your own pride, your image. So I think we're going round and round trying to solve people's problem, where actually I feel that it's a free choice. If you want a career improvement, you will go and improve your presentation skills, for example. You attend Susan's classes, how to speak good English, how to enunciate, And if you want to talk to a group of China workers and all that, you go and learn Mandarin, right? So it's like that. I think it's people's mindset of the pride that they have. And if I'm proud of who I am and what I'm supposed to do, I want to be better in that. Therefore, I will go and teach. We cannot force a role model on TV. Like every day, 7 to 7:30, we have this Speak Good English program. It doesn't work. Because I feel like we are trying to push for a model and push for that.
Let me try to put it in a different perspective. If you want, and I know there's many parents who want their children to speak better Mandarin, they ship them off to Shanghai for the summer or the long holidays to get an immersion experience, right? So they learn because they hear Mandarin spoken properly all the time, and then they learn that way. So if we don't, for those of us who can code switch, if we always speak broken English or Singlish to people whom we think can only understand Singlish and broken English, then we are not helping that environment and we're not creating that immersive experience. So that's my point.
I think you should create an environment where people can tell the difference between Singlish and English. You don't have to feel anything else. And the only way you can create a distinction is when you teach English properly. As I said, right. Singlish grammar is still changing, but English grammar is fixed in the way to a certain large extent. Teach that, and then you don't have to fear Singlish. Just let it evolve.
I think teaching, as we had said earlier, rather I said in my speech earlier, goes beyond what happens in school.
Yeah.
Because for one reason or another, some people come out of school without a strong foundation in English. Perhaps because they don't come from an English-speaking family. Perhaps they're just weak linguistically. But there will be some of these people who want to learn. And you cannot assume that all these people can afford the time or the money to go back to formal lessons.
So the whole nation has to speak English for these people?
No. It's free choice. I'm here saying that it would be good to be aware of people who cannot code switch. And there are people who cannot code switch who want to learn English. So it's not a question of forcing a program or enforcing a program, but being aware that such an environment exists in Singapore. And personally, Each of us can decide how we want to respond. And it is really about free choice. It is about free choice.
And if you want the people who, have bad English to learn Singlish, to learn English, sorry, then provide an avenue for them to go that's free or something, and they can't say, I want to learn, but I don't want to learn.
I want to learn, but you must feed me.
Yeah, I said, you must subconsciously plant it in my
I think sociologically that doesn't work. It's. I think I've made my point. It's interesting because it's become a debate.
Isn't this supposed to He's quite neutral, actually. No, I think what we're trying to do here is, I totally agree with Mr. Gwee, is that providing the spirit of discernment, the wisdom to differentiate the two. That's all. And like myself, I failed mathematics from Sec 3 to A levels, and I'm forced to learn because of my business. I want to, and I start learning how to read financial statements. And I have this illness. I'm sure there's an English word for it. When I see numbers, I want to sleep. It's in school, every math class or accounts class, financial class or economics, anything that's got to do with numbers, I fall asleep. So, but because I run a business,
dyscalculia. That's what I have.
It's called dyscalculia. Yeah.
Dyscalculia. Fear of numbers.
Yeah, it's fear. It's not fear. It's just it's a sleeping pill. So, my insomnia can be cured. Just opening up my finance manager's reports. Okay, sleep already. So, but you see, the thing is, because I run a business, and because in the early years of Fly, I got cheated by our external accountant and all that, I realized how important it is for me to understand how to read financial statements. I don't know how to do the statements, but I need to understand and compare them from this month versus last month, the expenditure and all that, because I knew that I have to for my business. So in that same spirit, if a person feels that they want to further their career, or they want to marry someone from England or Australia or US, then they have to go and learn the language, right? Similarly, my dad remarried, and she speaks only Tagalog. He had to learn Tagalog to speak with her, and then she therefore, later on, she learned English as well, right? So I think, don't undermine the human survival instinct. If you want it, you will get it. If you put in the time, effort, and practice, I think anyone can do it.
I don't think anyone can disagree with that.
So I don't think this movement need to create an environment for them. I think this movement need to provide for maybe fun ways of learning English, fun way of learning proper English. For example, what I love to do is, because during my A levels, I had a British teacher for GP. By the way, I have A1 for GP, just so you know, for my A levels. So my British teacher is Mrs. Stephanie Dury, and she taught me this word called, what is it? No, it's a double of the irregular. What is that? Irregardless, yeah. Because we always like to say irregardless, but regardless is you don't regard. I love to correct Singaporeans and my clients that they will think, wow, so good at your English. But actually it's common sense, right? Yeah. And it's not Singlish. Yes. You see? So I think I would rather you spend your effort on correcting grammars and structures than telling people. We should just leave Singlish out because you don't.
No. You see, you have been misled. I'm not saying
been misled.
that. Yes.
By who?
By yourself.
By myself.
Yes. Because from the start, we've said, we're leaving Singlish alone, but I'm just focus. How can we help each other improve our English?
I just gave you the answer.
Can we role model English for someone? It's up to us. You may not, but there will be others in this room who may.
No, I think we did answer in so many ways, right? I mean, I said personally that, if you want a role model, have someone who is able to speak English and Singlish and tell the difference. Yeah. That is a great way to go about it, rather than someone who says English or Singlish. That is not a great role model, because you basically make them turn it into a esteem issue for someone who's struggling already with language. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing is, we say that if someone wants to learn English well, you can't say that, oh, I want to learn English well, but I won't do anything about it. You can't. You have to take the effort. You have to seek out ways of learning. And it's great if Speak Good English movement can provide avenues for them to go there. And if they do not have the money, they can go there and learn it for free. That's one. Second way is, as you mentioned earlier, through entertainment, through ways to attract them to come to your sessions, and enjoy speaking English well, and they have fun and they learn something from it. That's another way. What you can't do is like you have people sitting there saying, oh, I want to learn, but they don't want to do anything. You can't do anything about that.
Okay, someone just flashed
It kind
the 5 minute
It kind of
time.
reminds me of how in army, when somebody is punished for being slow, right? What happens? The corporal makes the whole platoon all pump, and while this person is running, I can pump forever, and this person will run faster, because if he has a certain, he's not gonna, it's not gonna get into his head. If it's not gonna get into his head that, I want to be fit or I want to run faster, he just keeps running slowly at his own pace. The rest of us will be suffering, and there's really no connection in a way, right? So why bring this kind of militaristic logic into teaching English or changing the environment in that sense? You're saying that all of us speak English well, and then these people who cannot speak English well will start speaking English well. That's like saying, if you keep pumping, that guy will become fit.
I don't know where you're coming from, really. But we have one more subject to talk about, which is broken English. And broken English is ungrammatical English, or English that is has mistakes in them. I'm going to read you a few real examples. This is a sign that basically says that the water supply has been cut off, and the sign says disputation of water supply to toilet flushing systems. The word is disruption. The next two are very frightening to me because they come from schools. The first one is an announcement about Racial Harmony Day celebrations. And in this announcement, sent to parents, there's this sentence: kindly allow your child to put on their racist costumes to school. This is less serious, but shows the broken English as well. The CCA Day will be changed to 22nd July in conjunction of the Makers Fair in Singapore. Please assembly at the school. And I think these are very clear examples of broken English. And how do we help people with that sort of problem? I mean, I agree with Li Sui that the foundation must be laid in school, and I would add at home. If you're fortunate enough to come from an English-speaking home, or multilingual home where English is also spoken as well as another language. But how do we help people with broken English? It's a very difficult question.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that these examples are not due to interference of English. They're just bad English. So you just need to be taught English well, or you learn it properly.
I guess when it appears, you correct it. You just tell the person in the face, or in the email, you respond back with a correction or something.
English teacher in their school, you correct.
Exactly.
Maybe a science teacher, a history teacher. The person who wrote that could be a history teacher or science teacher or physics teacher whose English may not be as good as it. So if you're the English teacher, you correct it, no?
Can you say that again, what you said, Li Sui, because...
What did I say? I can't remember. Which bit? Could you give me a prompt? Huh? If someone speaks to you, and something sounds wrong, like he uses or she uses the word irregardless, you just tell them or him or her that it's regardless, just correct it back. If it's in an email, you could always just write back and
I
just
think that's
point
a
it out.
really
It's
good
just a very
example
simple
of
thing.
role modeling.
That's role modeling, man. That's just normal thing.
But what I think this symposium has shown that is that language is a very emotive and a very complex subject, and it's a reality. And how we respond to language is really up to us as individuals. Whether you can only speak broken English, whether you can only speak Singlish, whether you're bilingual in Singlish and another language, or whatever permutations you have. But the Speak Good English movement is me and a couple of people that also work in their ministries in other roles. As much as I like to say, let's start a school for people to come and enjoy learning English free of charge, it can't work that way, at least for now. And I don't know whether it can happen. But the Speak Good English movement is not a campaign. We are a movement because we want and need people to come and join us to help each other improve our English. If you believe in that, if you believe that it can be done, then you can be part of the movement, you can join the movement. And the movement can be 10 people, it can be 100 people, it can be 1,000 people, it can even be 100,000 people. I think we all respond to language very differently. I cannot say that I disagree with anything that the panelists have said. I think the perspectives are all valid, and everyone has said important and insightful and correct things. But the wonderful and interesting thing about language is that it is living. And we live and use our language organically, intuitively, and it's a part of us. So as much as Singlish is a part of us, if we want to use Mandarin, Malay, Tamil, or English, it must be also a part of us. And the fact that you can speak Singlish badly, you can also speak English badly, and also Mandarin badly and Malay badly. And if you want to improve your Singlish, you can also improve your English, Chinese, Malay, and Tamil. So it's a question of desire, and that was your point, Irene, that how much do you want it? How much do you feel you need it? And where can you get this? And some people, if they have no resources and if they're driven enough, they will find ways and means to learn English. I think it's been a very lively session, and I'm sure the other two sessions are also equally interesting. And this is really a beginning. I think the purpose of the symposium was really to help us think about the English language landscape and our individual place and roles within this landscape. And the way we respond and live in this landscape is not something that anyone else can dictate to you or give you instructions or give you rules. Language is an individual thing. And we, and in the Speak Good English movement, have a particular role, and that is to promote language and English language and good English language. And we push this agenda, and it is an agenda, but it's an agenda that I was thrown into, and now I believe passionately about. And if you're also concerned about the standard of English in Singapore, then my invitation to you is to join the movement. You don't need to fill up a form, you don't need to get a badge, but you just play your part in Singapore. Thank you.